my man, Antonio Pierce, who was hired last season as the team's coach after serving as the interim coach in 2022. And the Raiders went out and won 4 games and lost 13 games, and that was enough for a quick exit. Now, he had said back on Monday, Antonio Pierce had said that he was operating as if he would remain the team's head coach. He acknowledged that he had not yet met with the owner of the team. That has now happened, and he has been asked to leave the building in an orderly fashion with a nice giant check on his way out. So let us discuss the question. Why was Antonio Pierce given such a quick boot, kicked out of Las Vegas? So I have Feathers, industrial-sized container, and Van McCoy. And we will combine all of these things together, all of them, every one of them, and we will try to not doze off or have you doze off. So number one. Well, the problem, Antonio Pierce said, he had multiple problems. He did not have a resume of success to fall back on. If you go 4-13 and you have a history of success, you are more likely to get another opportunity. But from the very beginning, this was a dummy run. Now, I was Benny Brightside, both on television and here on the radio show, but Antonio Pierce knew what he signed up for. As Jerry Glanville taught me when I was a little boy, the NFL is an acronym, and it stands for not for long if you don't win. And Pierce knew that when he put his John Hancock on the contract, that Mark Davis and the Raider front office gave Antonio Pierce a big bag filled with chicken feathers and a broken stove. And they told Antonio Pierce, they said, listen, you have to make a delicious chicken casserole out of the chicken feathers and no stove. Now, the job was to win with Gardner Minshew, who had come close to the playoffs in Indy the year before, and Aiden O'Connell, to turn them into Rich Gannon or Carson Palmer. And in the end, it didn't go that way. Did not go that way. It went the opposite way. There was actually hope early on. The Raiders didn't suck from the very beginning. They actually were in the game until late. They blew it late in week 1 against the Chargers. They upset the Ravens in week 2 in Baltimore. People forget about that, but the Ravens lost at home to the Raiders and Gardner Minshew, a fourth-quarter comeback by the Raiders. So they were set up. The turning point to me was back in week 3. So the Raiders are off to a 1-1 start. They were playing a terrible Carolina team in week 3, a Carolina team that was beaten and broken. If I remember correctly, Andy Dalton played that game, and the Raiders ended up losing, and it wasn't even close. And that changed the entire course of the season. Now, the Raiders lost a bunch of close games. I think it was 4 close losses, and I'm not going to make a big deal about that because bad teams lose close games. I've said that for a long time, and that's just the way it is, all right? But Antonio Pierce was a guy that was supposedly born and bred to be a Raider, grew up a Raider fan, knew what it meant, knew that it mattered, knew what it was like to be a Raider fan. And when he was hired, it was a wonderful thing, right? It was a great mitzvah for the Raider fans. Like, this guy gets us. But he could not coach up a flawed roster. And because of that and some other issues there, he is asked to leave the building. But he's going to get a nice check, and he'll get a fair amount of money, a little bit of a parachute, not a full golden parachute, but a nice parachute. Now, what does this move say about Mark Davis and his ownership with the Raiders? Another one-and-done coach. So Mark Davis is the type of an owner that must really enjoy the 1970s British heavy metal band Queen, because when it comes to running the Raiders and the coaches that he puts in place there, it's the classic, another one bites the dust, another one and another one and another one. The Raiders are now going to look to hire their 5th head coach since leaving Oakland and relocating to Lost Wages, Nevada. That was in 2000. Now, I realize we're in 2025. It doesn't quite feel like that yet. It's still early in 2025. But in the span of 4 years and a month, the Raiders are now going on their 5th head coach, and their 9th head coach since Mark Davis took over as the owner when Al Davis croaked back in 2011. So they have consistently had to change coaches. Now, eventually, Mark Davis is just going to start hiring some of the people that are his buddies at P.F. Chang's, and they'll start coaching the team. Why keep Tom Telesco? He doesn't seem to know what he's doing. It's likely just a temporary move. You got to think down the line the Raiders will pull the plug on that. Now, page 2, how good a gig is the Raiders' job? So it's not horrific. I mean, to me, there's no such thing as a bad job in the NFL. People say, oh, that's a bad job. Nobody wants that job. I say phooey. I say phooey to that. It's kind of like what I do for a living, right? Doing a radio show. And like, there are radio stations that don't do well. There are networks that don't do well. But there's really not a bad radio job. You're getting paid to bloviate. How bad could that be? But in terms of this is big-time money with the Raiders. 1 of 32. Is it on the lower end of the spectrum? Sure. Pays well. Get to live in Vegas. A lot of people would love to live in Vegas. And some of the early names that have been mentioned, we talked about Pete Carroll to Chicago. Pete Carroll's name has been mentioned with the Raiders. Brian Flores, good luck on that. Mike Vrabel, although he's likely going to the Patriots. And Liam Cohen, the Bucs offensive coordinator. All of them and others expected to draw interest from the Raiders. Now, when Al Davis owned the team, it was just win, baby. Now the mantra is just lose, baby. Whoever gets the gig, whoever ends up getting the job as the coach of the Raiders, needs to go online and buy one of those industrial-sized containers of sage, because you're going to have to fumigate the locker room. You're going to have to fumigate the front office and go in there with that holistic medication, right? Walk around burning the sage, get rid of that negative energy that has followed the Raider franchise around for many, many years, ever since Barrett Robbins decided to go on a bender to Tijuana before the Super Bowl over 20 years ago. The Raiders have never recovered. All right, now, final point. We head now to the Brady Bunch, with much fanfare. It has been reported high and low, near and far, east and west, north and south, that the limited partner in the Raider ownership, Tom Brady is going to be part of a blue ribbon committee that will interview head coaching candidates and be there to support Mark Davis. That Brady's in. He's in on these meetings. He only owns a very small percent of the team, but yet he is going to hang out with Mark Davis and decide who the next coach of the Raiders is. Should Raider fans be excited, or should they be skeptical of Tom Brady's influence in the new coach? So I would advise being a jaded realist is the way to go here. Assume nothing and question everything. And when you take a couple of steps back, I don't know Tom Brady. I think you've kind of figured that out. I'm doing the overnight show, and he's got houses in Vegas and L.A. and Florida and Boston, all over. But Tom Brady, from what we know about him, he's got his fingers in a lot of pies. You could argue too many pies. The fingers are in a pie here, a pie there, a pie everywhere. And so he's got the TV thing. He's got business endeavors. He's got this Raider thing he's futzing around with. But when it comes to the Raiders, like Tom Brady, he's got that. The whole vibe is that Van McCoy tune from back in the day, Do the Hustle, right? It's a side hustle. He's not the controlling owner of the Raiders. And Mark Davis, I've done some intel. I've investigated Mark Davis a little bit. From what I've heard, even though people are saying that they're making it seem like Tom Brady's going to be the de facto GM, that's not the sense that I'm getting. That Mark Davis has nothing going on. He's never done anything to improve the world. He just happened to win the genetic lottery and be born into the Davis family and inherit the control of the Raider franchise. But it's not like he was a great business person, or he invented something, or he spent 30 years working hard and providing labor and making the world a better place. No, he just happened to be born into the right DNA pool, and he now happens to own part of the Raiders. and run the team. And so the idea that he's going to give that up, that's the only thing that he really has in his entire life. He's got nothing else going on for him. And allow Tom Brady to do everything. No. That doesn't mean that Tom Brady's not going to give his opinion. Brady seems to be stretched pretty thin. Not to mention, in my lifetime, I can count on one hand the number of legends who have done good work as executives. On multiple hands, I can count legends of the game when it came to decision-making. Just because you could play the sport does not mean you could pick other players to play the sport. And for reference, I would like to show you Derek Jeter running the Miami Marlins into the ground. How about Michael Jordan with the Charlotte Hornets? How did that go? And we can go on and on and on. I think you get the point. Generally does not go all that well. Just generally speaking, does not go all that well.